Alrighty, well I've filled the van up there. Of course I filled it up when I first got it, and now I've refilled it, and I've got some figures for how much fuel this thing runs at, and it's bloody good. Very good, actually. When I had my other sedan that you know that I've had since 2009, basically I was doing long runs with that because I was on like as many people are, propane conversions have a little bit of a waiting list, or at least they did, and they had a shocking one. At one point there it got up to like a 1.5 year waiting list. But I was on a waiting list that had sort of, particularly when petrol, gasoline prices go up, these propane conversions, you know, they're just booked out. And yeah, at one point there it got up to 1.5 years, even 2 years in some cases. And but I was on one that was only 3 months long, and some places apparently was 6 months long at the time. So in that time period I got to drive it around, but I mainly just drove it on weekends, and I'd do long trips to different towns and stuff just out of the joy of driving, and I was getting between 10.5 and 11 litres per 100 k's. Now this has had a little bit of in and around town driving, but it's been mainly highway driving. You know, of course I drove it out of, well, essentially the suburbs, and then eventually got on the freeway. But it was a fairly straight, you know, I got on the main run pretty much straight away, although there was quite a few lights and that. So really speaking, it's not, you know, this is really highway figures, generally speaking. Straight highway I'd probably get a little bit better, but it's 9.7 litres per 100 k's. Now in US terms that works out basically 24.5 miles to the gallon. It's a little bit better than 24.5 miles to the gallon, but only very marginally. So, you know, perfect highway run, long distances, you might be able to get 25 miles to the gallon out of it, because it was actually 24.55, but you know, so I'll just go at 24.5 miles to the gallon in US gallons. My father and some older Australians still think in terms of British gallons, because you've got to realise that 3.8 litres in a US gallon is actually 4.5 litres in a British gallon. The British gallon is about the only British thing that's bigger than an American thing. And long story short, it is basically dead smack on 29 miles to the British gallon. That's quite remarkable, because when we had other cars that as a kid, my parents went out and bought one that was about 6 years old, and essentially it's the same block that Ford has in decades of vehicles. And that was getting 20 to 22 miles to the gallon, and this thing's doing 29, and it's not 6 years old, it's 17 years old. This is the beauty of fuel injection over carburetor vehicles. You know, it's not miraculous, but what sort of is miraculous is that other vehicle that I had, yeah, it's more powerful, there's no doubt about it, no question at all, but it's only, it's you know, probably only 2/3 of the height of the van, if that. It might not even be that. And it was 10 years old, getting 10.5 to 11 litres per 100 k's. This thing is 17 years old, getting 9.7 litres to 100 k's for what was 90% of what was a highway run, but not a full highway only run. But yeah, a little bit of stop and start traffic, but not much. But anyway, that gives me a bit of a figure to work on. Now from that, I've started, you know, I know what I spend every week on propane to drive back and forth, and I've really sat there thinking, yeah, you know, you're probably going to run the same dollars as you are you know, because you got one that's propane versus one that's gasoline, and for the same engine, it is about a half the price of what, you know, a gasoline version is versus the propane conversion. And yeah, the thing is, when you buy a lot of the factory-built propane ones, they've been company cars that have done enormous miles, and they're 4 years old, 5 years old, and they're fucked. You know, they've done so many cars that look nice inside, but as you look at the fucking odometer on the things, it's like, holy shit! You would have been doing like 5 times what the average person, maybe 6 times what the average person does every year. You know, in the miles on the damn thing, you're like, shit. So the trick is, really speaking, if you want a propane vehicle, you either buy one brand new, because if you get one that's 5 years old second hand, trust me, it's done that many miles, it's fucking ridiculous. You actually get a low mileage gasoline one, and then get the conversion done on it, because you absolutely will not find any low mileage factory built propane ones ordered from the factory as propane. And they just don't exist. There's no such thing as a low mileage one. So you got to get the gasoline conversion. But in that, you generally end up noticing that your cost of fuel drops to half, around half. And by around half, I don't mean half if you're lucky. I mean 95% of, well, not 95, about 80% of the time, it's actually a bit less than half. It'll easily be half, and people go, oh yeah, but is that half only sometimes, only, you know, a few months of the year? No, it's about half. It's actually slightly less than half 10 months of the year. That's what it's like. So it'll be around about half, it'll average out at. But most of the time it's actually slightly under half. Now, I know with this thing that you know, oh, let's face it, it's basically $100 a week to run it, which is, you know, around 95, around 75, maybe 80 US dollars. It's, you know, so many times I'll fill up there, and it'll be 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and it's generally about 3 times a week, and, you know, it runs 30 something dollars, it might be 35, might be 38, da-da-da. If I come back here midweek to see the cute putty or whatever, just to keep the joint, you know, afloat and keep me cat from fretting or getting worried that no one's here, you know, and I probably will come back midweek. I have calculated that I'm probably going to do half the mileage that I would do, and this is so long as I don't go on any large drives and whatnot, and I may well, but if I just stick to, you know, going to the shops and then, you know, bringing it back and parking it out the front of work and sleeping there overnight, as well as one midweek trip back home, it will literally be 500 kilometres a week instead of 1,000 or 1,030 something kilometres a week. Now, in that, I have calculated the current fuel cost, and it will basically work out about $68 a week. Now, let's, you know, it may blow out obviously quite easily to $70, maybe even $80 a week. But the fuel prices are really quite high at the moment, higher than they've been in friggin' months, like 6 months or so. If I drop back to the fuel prices as they more realistically are, it works out as this, $60 a week versus $100 a week. And that's not go up there Monday, come back here Friday night. That's go up there Monday, come back here midweek at some point, and go up there again, then come back Friday night. And that's sort of remarkable. I thought I would end up spending $100 to maybe $120 on fuel, and no, at the moment it'll be $70, but when the fuel prices get back, realistically, it'll be $60 a week, and if they go fairly cheap like they were not so long ago, it $55 a week. I can't actually believe it. That I'm going to be going through so fewer dollars with all this stuff. I don't know if propane costs half the price per distance as what gasoline did, because they used to give you, subsidise your conversion quite a lot, like a few $1,000s per conversion, and it was, you know, quite a substantial conversion subsidy. It would cover 2/3 of the cost easily, yeah, or at least half the cost. Probably it was more than half the cost, let's be honest. But in that they said, well, at a later point we're going to start taxing propane. They didn't have a tax on it, and then they put on a 7-cent a litre tax, and then it was 10 cents, and now I think we're up to the 12.5 cents. But you know, it looks as though this stupid idea of saying, well, we'll give you a heap of money to convert over. Yeah, now that they're funding those conversions by taxing the actual fuel itself, has sort of shot itself in the foot, and I knew it would eventually. But I'm surprised that, you know, if the fuel prices stop being bullshit, I'll be back to $60 a week. And that's remarkable. That is bloody stunning. So long as I don't decide to have a tour around this place and that place, and I probably will for the first couple of months, because there's a number of beach areas that I'm interested in looking at. But if it's winter and it's raining and shit, and I've already been to these beach areas, I'm not going to be looking at beach areas in the freezing friggin' wind, you know. So I'm sure I will the first few months. It'll probably be $90 a week, but once the interest in some of these places that I don't often get to or have never been to dies off, well, you know, my costs will be fairly good again, and they would be even better if I didn't come home midweek. And some weeks I don't know. I get the feeling I might. And there's times where I might just go, oh, fuck this, I'm not driving back. You know, when I was staying in that place the other day, holy shit, so much free time. So much free time, you don't know what to do, and you end up going to bed early and getting a good night's sleep, as opposed to come back here, fuck around on YouTube, and then go, oh shit, I should be getting ready for bed, get ready for bed, and still don't really pack your lunch away properly, and then you've missed something out or leave part of it behind the next morning, you know, and go there and watch YouTube for another half hour after I get into bed, you know. Anyway, that's the way that one goes.